What if Galaxy removed its ship class limits tomorrow? How would the game change? How would it affect battle? How would it affect you? That is the scenario we're going to be talking about today in today's video. I thought it would be kind of fun, instead of complaining about Galaxy or doing a list, to do a more what if, what would happen style video. Something a little bit different, but hopefully you guys enjoy. Let me know down in the comments what other what if scenarios you would want me to talk about for this game. Alright, so let's get into it. So first off, the first thing you think is, okay, well, Shasko, obviously super capitals would be spammed to all hell. Right, that would probably happen, but first you need to think about one thing. One of the main reasons, besides obviously there being broken if there was no ship limit, is the ship class limits are designed in one way to reduce lag. Think about how laggy the game gets when just one Thea spawned in. Now imagine how laggy it'd get if 4 Theas are spawned in on the same team at the same time. Yeah, no thanks. Let's say tomorrow they're just like, you know what, screw it, no more ship limits. The first thing that would happen is lag would spike to an all-time high. If you think game lag is already pretty bad, just whew, imagine having a battle between 20 dreadnoughts on one server. Yikes. That is when server lag will get really bad. But true server lag would get pretty awful, but it would create some amazing visual battles. Massive ships versus fleets that are merely comprised of smaller ships. This would be super interesting, of course. However, it would never work in the way that Galaxy is currently built, because the game just cannot handle it. So as I kind of mentioned, there would be more intense battles, of course, maybe between 2 super caps on each in-game faction. Now I know this already happens when a clan has multiple factions under control, but this is more the concept of one team would have multiple super caps and the other team would too. That could be very interesting, because you could have an Asterisk sitting in the back sniping while you have a Thea in the front doing a more direct spinal assault or something like that. Something that you may see if this happened would be like, okay, here's a fleet composition. You got maybe 3 Leviathans, 2 Judgments, an Asterisk, and a Thea, all on the same team. Now I know players already do stuff like this when it's a faction that has control over multiple in-game factions, thus allowing more ships per class, but in this video I want to talk about what would happen if you can do that on just one team. Now, obviously the super capitals would be spammed, dreadnoughts and such, but when I suggested this idea on my Discord, someone mentioned, well, Shasko, obviously people would just battleship swarm. Currently in the game, due to there being only 4 battleships allowed per faction, it somewhat limits the composition you can do in a fleet. However, I do agree that this update is important and class limits should be in the game. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but if they were removed, it would create some chaos, just absolute chaos. Imagine 8 Helioses on one faction. Yeah, they're just death everywhere. So, as I already mentioned, there would be way more fleet composition possibilities. You can have spinal ships for countering large enemy ships, AA ships, and plenty of well-rounded PvP ships as well, all in the same fleet. I know you can already do this, but it's a bit more difficult. But in this you could have 2 Loyalists, 2 Genesis, and then 2 Jackals all on one team, and then maybe 3 Tempests, 1 Levy, and then 1 Anteri, something like that. Pretty weird example, but it would be interesting. Think about this. If there was no ship class limits, it would be a lot easier to get higher bounty, because more players would spawn in higher tier ships. This isn't a guaranteed, but I do feel like this would naturally happen. Due to there being no arguments over, hey, I want my super cap in, or you can have your super cap in, you can just spawn all the super caps in. It'd be easier to get super capital kills, thus increase bounty and more server chaos. So I think overall, there'd be way more high target kills in Galaxy. This would have a avalanche effect of increased bounty among players and kind of trade of credits per players increasing due to bounties being collected, bounties being increased, and stuff like that. I do feel like that'd be kind of cool. And it would lead to some super capital chaos, as I mentioned earlier, because Oh man, I don't know if how many of you guys own dev server, but I've been on the dev server when 6 super caps are just duking it out, and that is laggy as hell. So imagine a normal galaxy, like you could have 10 super caps versus 10 super caps. That would just be chaos. This one's a little bit more far-fetched, but I kind of feel like there would also be a decrease in anxiety when using a dreadnought or something. So newer players, veteran players don't experience this as much, but a newer player, you got your first dread, and you know there's only 3 dread spots on your team, and if you have a full team full of high-skilled players, there's a lot of pressure on you. You have to perform well in your role, otherwise they're going to kick you out of that role. However, if you're not taking up a reserved spot, there shouldn't be as much anxiety around, not as much pressure on you for taking up that spot. That could be kind of good for some new players to get more comfortable using a higher risk ship, such as a Ridgebreaker or Judgment or something like that, which is a much more detrimental loss than a Black Flare or Console or something like that. So my idea with this video is there's still loyalty though. Loyalty is not removed in this concept. However, if loyalty was removed and this would be removed, oh boy, that would just be But if there's still loyalty, just no ship limits, that could work a little bit. It wouldn't work great, but it wouldn't work terribly either. I do feel like a cause of this though would be there would be way less carrier action. A lot of people use carriers if battleship spots are taken up and they can't spawn in a battleship, so they'll use a carrier's fighters. I mean, I do know a lot of people do carrier swarms, like fighter swarms, just because it's effective and not very risky, but a lot of the times in a huge battle, if there's no battleship spots open, they will just use fighters. If there's infinite spots in every class, then there probably wouldn't be as many players using fighters in carriers, because why would you use a fighter in carrier when you can use a Genesis? This would also, I do feel like this update would also not only decrease fighter use in carriers, but heavily increase the use of carriers. Due to players being able to use a carrier at 8% loyalty and some carriers being as powerful as dreadnoughts, you may see stuff like a Prometheus swarm. You may see things like Nyx nuking more often. You may see things like the Icarus being more used, or the Revelation and stuff like that, as more powerful battleships, because if you can get that at 8% versus 10%, plenty of players will start using those. So I do feel like you would see an increased use of carriers as actual weapon ships versus, their designed role as a carrier. I know there's a lot of outcomes that could happen if this update was removed tomorrow. Let me know in the comments what you think would happen if the ship class limits were removed. And also let me know what other what if videos would you want me to do. Some ideas I currently have is what if loyalty was removed, and another would be what if carriers fighters were automated. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've been getting a little bit back into Galaxy lately, so I'm going to make a little bit more Galaxy videos than I used to. So anyway, stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.